When I think about my dad, I would describe him as a leader.
Attention to prayers. Dad would announce from the head of the dinner table, "Melanie, whose turn is it?" And she would say, "Maybe it's Louie's turn." And I would lead with, "Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts." That is how our dad, the captain, began each family evening meal. That command gives us an insight to who Dad was and his values. The only thing Dad loved more than airplanes was his family. And this was sacred time. This was a time for us to gather together, to be thankful for the blessings we have and for each other. I'm Dad and Mom's firstborn. Dad called me Louie. Joey, Danny, Davy, and two precious daughters, Melanie and Julie, followed. Our beautiful mom was Robin. During the 3 years before Dad moved to the Alzheimer's facility, I had the privilege and joy of caring for him. Angel Burke assisted my wife, Janine, and me in this good work. Angel was his devoted caregiver and buddy. Angel, you put a smile on his face every day. We love you and we thank you.
My name's Angel, and it was a pleasure to know Bob, actually. When I first met him, he just looked at me and says, you sure are a cute thing." He would say different things to let you know that he appreciated you. He always would tell me, "Thank you for taking good care of me." And I just, that'll never leave me. That is stuck in my spirit.
During that time, Dad was always happy. He loved being alive and took satisfaction in the simple things of life.
When I was a little girl, and we lived on Nome Street in Aurora, and Dad was a pilot with United before he became the director for training pilots. My dad, every single time he came home from a trip, he would reach into his pants pocket and he would pull out a package of green double mint gum. And sometimes there was only one piece left in that pack of 5, and sometimes it was a brand new pack. But looking back, I realized that he either always made sure he saved me the last piece, or if he forgot, he stopped by the vending machine to make sure he had a brand new pack to give me. And I never ran to the door expecting the double mint gum. I ran to the door because I was so excited to see my daddy. But he always pulled out a pack of gum or a piece of gum just for me and for nobody else. And it was his way of communicating to me that I was special and that he was always thinking of me, and that we should always share and think about each other, And I'll just always remember that.
Bobby Feiten was the firstborn of Hazel, a one-room school teacher, and Louie, the owner of Feiten's Ice Cream. Wow, what a way to start your life. At Winona High School, Dad was captain of the Windhawks football team. He was a champion high school checkers player. He beat not only high school players, he beat professional players. From childhood, all he wanted to do was fly airplanes. He took his first solo when he was in high school. After 2 years of college, he became a Navy pilot and served our country in World War II. Dad was part of an elite squadron that flew Navy PV-1 bombers, a real high-speed bomber with long range. He flew them on the longest missions of World War II. They flew from Attu Island in Alaska to Japan and back. Dad loved flying those trips. Even with Japanese Zeros were taken off to shoot him from behind and he was gunning those engines, he loved it. And the members of his crew loved him. And we had a chance as we grew up to meet some of them. And we heard one thing that was consistent. Your dad was the best pilot in the squadron. At the age of 29, he wrote the Navy Reserve's Navigational Instruction Manual on how to fly an airplane on instruments. The Navy asked him to write the instructional manual. This taught the pilots how to fly safely on cloudy nights or in blizzards. At age 39, he was the youngest captain in the United States Navy. After 23 years, he retired from the military and he went to work with United Airlines. First as a pilot until mandatory retirement at age 60, and then he took his knowledge and his love for flying and shared it with students at the Flight Simulation Center for United Airlines. He was one of the directors there. Now I want to tell you about the man our family will hold in our hearts forever. His life shows us the way to joy and contentment. Here are a few of the life lessons of Bob Feiten. Number one, kindness. Our dad was one of the sweetest guys. He was the first one on the block to welcome a new neighbor, and he was always there to help and advise his children and grandchildren. That kind of loving spirit was returned to Dad every day through the love and concern of our sister-in-law, Julie. Julie, you gave Dad such a great gift in your care and love for him. As his guardian, she made sure his remaining years were full of joy. He was happy every day. Julie, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
When I think about and reflect on who Bob was, the first thing that comes to my mind is that he was a gentle giant. He was 6'5", perfect posture, booming voice, and yet he was so tender-hearted and loving and kind, compassionate, generous. Always had a compliment or a kind word for everybody he met. Bob was one of these people that was not only interesting, but interested in whoever he was talking with. Maybe you've seen the line or the quote that said, "Be somebody that makes everybody feel like somebody," and I think that was Bob Feiten. He brought so much joy and laughter to everybody he met. Right through his final days at Brookdale, he kept the caregivers entertained with his one-liners, which then in turn made him just a delight to take care of. Bob was also somebody who took every role in life seriously. which meant he was an incredible son, brother, father, husband, father-in-law, uncle, grandpa, friend, neighbor, you name it. He took those roles seriously, as well as his career, every role he had in his career. But above all, I think Bob was a family man. He would drop anything and everything to help his family in any way that he could. Bob is just and was a blessing to everybody who knew him. I think we were all just fortunate, and I know I will treasure every minute that I had with him. Love you, Bob.
Dad always took pride in doing his best. Dad took great pride in being a leadership. He always stopped and talked to neighbors. And Dad always said, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. And he showed it to us every day of our lives. He got involved with us and took the lead in all the projects. I love this next one. Be the best pilot you can be. No matter what plane you fly, people are depending on you.
After my dad and mom got married, but before they went on their honeymoon, there was a bad snowstorm near Aberdeen, South Dakota, and Aberdeen, South Dakota was shut in. No commercial flights into the airport. You couldn't get in by train. You couldn't get in and out by vehicle. And the Aberdeen Hospital, St. Francis, had a woman that was dying of tetanus. Her jaw was locking up. They didn't have anti-tetanus serum. So they sent out a distress call, and my dad answered it. He had a special Navy license to fly into closed airports, no questions asked. Didn't need permission from any government officials. He got into a twin-engine prop plane with his boss, the base commander, George Fairbanks, as the navigator, co-pilot, and they flew the plane 500 miles round trip to Aberdeen, South Dakota, delivering the anti-tetanus medicine that saved that young mother's life. It made the newspapers in Minnesota. They're happy to report about the two Navy pilots from Minnesota saving the life of the Sodak woman, as they used to say, South Dakota. And that was on Friday the 13th, January 1950.
Dad knew how to encourage, support, and bring the best out in the people whose lives he touched. Be gracious and welcome those who do not believe what you believe. Dad was not only welcoming and gracious, he honestly wanted to hear what your life was all about. He welcomed everyone. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Let me look it up. Now that's a guy you can trust.
One of the things that I remember about Dad is that he thought very carefully before he gave advice. He would sometimes take a deep breath and give his words slowly. But there were other times when he clearly had been thinking about what he wanted to say. Like the time when I graduated from medical school over 25 years ago, as I received my diploma on a sunny day outside in the quadrangle at CU Medicine. I came walking off with my diploma in hand. My dad was standing by a tree waiting for me to come back. He reached out his hand, shook my hand, and said to me very thoughtfully, I never minded it when a doctor said, I don't know, let me look it up. And I have carried that wisdom with me for many, many years. I can't tell you how many times I've been seeing a patient and I just had to say, you know, I don't know the answer to that right now, but I'm going to look it up for you and I'll get back to you on that. What incredible wisdom, and I think that we all need to take that on in our own careers. So that's what I love about Dad.
And the last one, eat ice cream. savor the simple pleasures of life. Our wonderful family was at his bedside for our dad's final flight. As his children and grandchildren gathered round during his last day and hours, each of us, in our own way, lovingly affirmed his greatest accomplishment. Dad, Daddy, Papa, you're the best father in the world, and we love you very, very much.
Hi, I'm Ben. I am Papa Bob's grandson, and I am Dan, his son's son. I think when I think about Papa Bob, I think about when I was in the Cub Scouts in about first grade, and Papa Bob helped me with the Pinewood Derby. So I brought my little Pinewood Derby car here. As you can see, it's very finely crafted. When I say Papa Bob helped me make the Pinewood Derby car, I mean, I think I supervised and he did it, but we ended up winning first place in the Pinewood Derby, and naturally we painted it Broncos colors, and you'll notice he put a bunch of weights in the bottom and he calculated it just right. He's like got little marks for how far to put the wheels in and everything. It's just immaculate. The one thing you'll notice is that the driver is backwards. That's because this fell off and my mom glued it on backwards. So it wasn't Papa Bob's fault. We all know he was a perfectionist, and so that's the one thing when people look back at this, they might say, well, Bob Feiten wouldn't put the driver on backwards, but he didn't.
My brother Bob learned to fly quite young in Winona, Minnesota, his hometown. He has spent a lot of time out at the airport, so he was on pretty good terms with Max Conrad. In the process of learning to fly, he would go up and take flights in a Piper Cub. This one particular day, he flew the Piper Cub out to where our house was in Pleasant Valley, right next to the golf course. It was about 7:30 at night, not dark yet. Bob landed the plane on the second hole of the golf course, about 200 feet from our house. Left the plane there, walked over to our house. "Come on, Dad, I'm going to take you for a ride." My dad said, "What do you mean? I'm not going anywhere. The car isn't running." No, in an airplane. An airplane. Come on, come on. So he takes Dad over to the golf course, puts him in this Piper Cub, starts it up, turns around, takes off, gives him about a 10-minute flight. Comes back, lands on the golf course again. Well, he was able to do that on the golf course because it was late enough at night when the golfers were all done playing golf, but it wasn't dark yet, so he could land the plane and see to take off. After the flight, and Dad got out, and Bob said, "Well, you'll have to go home by yourself. I got to get the plane back." And Dad says, "Well, that was one hell of a ride. I liked it."
You know, I've been thinking a lot about, what it was about Bob that always kind of drew me to him when he was in a room. And definitely, as I was listening to Lou and thinking it through the life, one of the things about him, I always thought, and he probably would have hated it, I don't know, but I always thought, this guy should be on TV. And the reason was, I never saw his face at rest. He had the most expressive face. If he was surprised, you knew he was surprised. I mean, if he found something funny and sort of delightful, you knew. If he was kind of irritated with something, you knew. I always thought he might be great at checkers, but I would love to have played him at poker because I just don't know. That would have been your game. And I think that sort of expressive face actually come because the truth is, it was not theatrical in the sense that it was not put on. His face was one of those signs of what it means to really live in the world with less or no facade. I think there would be very few situations. I mean, you could find situations, I've no doubt, you could find situations where Bob was uncomfortable. You would have a hard time finding situations where he was uncomfortable being himself. And that's different. I've always said, no one likes to lose anyone, and I doubt there's really anything for the survivors, there's ever such a thing as a happy death, but this came close. I mean, no one could say, his life was cut short. Unless he was planning on 150 years, his life, 96 years. And I can't tell you, there have been times that I've thought, that I've been with people where it's tragic because you say, well, in the end, they died alone. That was not the issue here. He died surrounded by family. And I always think that's when our faith has done its job, is when, in the right order, parents raise children, children bury parents. That's as good as it gets. That's the goodness. As Joe was reading today with his back to me, I was like, that's Dan. Oh my, it's identical. And this is a story, I'm not going to break the seal. I'm just going to tell you what happened at the beginning of the first time, and I can't really remember whether it was Ben or Gabe. In school, we had a school confession service, and one of them came into the confessional, and it's right back there, and it's a well-built room, but he comes back and he says, "Well, Father," and I was like, everyone in the church will hear this confession. I knew immediately whose child they were. And as booming as the voice was, all you had to do is go up and listen to, his father or any of the uncles. You knew exactly where it came from. And then I met Bob. I went, no, that's even the bigger one. I'm assuming, that his father did voiceovers for, I would love to have heard what that voice was. But, it's more than just physiology, both for the boys and the girls, in a very real sense, that they got their voice in the world from their father. I kind of would challenge us, honestly, not as, I can bring it up on the drop of a hat, but to honestly go through life expressing as many genuine emotions as you saw on the face of Bob Feiten over the years. And expressing them as fully embraced. Because I can tell you, I never saw him a little surprised. I never saw him thinking something was a little funny. I mean, it was funny, it was irritating, it was surprising, he was right there. And you knew it. And when someone is that present to you, it's almost seductive. And it draws people in, and it is the fabric of community. And I've no doubt in his future, it will be the fabric of heaven.
As we leave today, our Father will live on in all of us. Our Father was very analytical and confident in his decisions. You can see that in my brother Joe, the CPA, and one of the nicest guys I know. It just happens to be my brother. Dad was an artist and communicator. My brother Davey, who created many wonderful family shows and movies at Walt Disney and Pixar, received those gifts. Davey, we love you and we miss you. Papa loved little children. Having his children and grandchildren share in his life was his greatest joy. That love of children lives on in my brother Dan, a pediatrician, and my sister Melanie, a speech therapist, who have devoted their life to helping children and their families. Dad is so proud of you. Julie, hi Julie in California, I hope you hear this. Our dad always had a big smile on his face and brightened the day of everyone he met. Dad wants you to take those big blue eyes, beautiful smile, and make someone feel special every day. And for me, Louis, when I pass away someday, in my eulogy, I hope someone says, he was a sweet and kind man, just like his dad.
When you're a little girl and sort of your world is your family, having someone, this big, powerful, deep voice man, like this legend, treat you like you were, you know, everything, means so much. And that's probably the thing I will always remember and try to emulate with my son and hopefully with anyone who comes through my door, and just really try to embody that genuine generosity that he exhibited at all times, regardless of the circumstances.
Hi, I'm Gabe, and one thing about Papa, he was always able to make us laugh, whether it was by constantly looking up from his food and seeing my brother Ben and I together and asking us for the 13th time, "Are you guys twins?" And we'd say, "No, Papa, we're not twins, 18 months apart." But, you know, he definitely loved his family, he loved company. I'll always remember his ability to make everyone laugh and make everyone feel special, whether it was saying, you know, "We've got some good-looking women in this family," or him asking me, you know, 300 times, "How big are those feet?" And then saying, "Those are Feiten feet." But I'm just really gonna miss him, and I couldn't have asked for a better grandfather.
Hi, my name's Bob Potok, and I'm Bob Feiten's favorite son-in-law, and I probably should mention I'm his only son-in-law at this point as well. I met Bob when I was about 20 years old in college. I was dating his daughter Melanie, Shortly after that, we got married, and being part of the Feiten family was pretty cool. I had 4 brother-in-laws that were all about 6'2" to 6'5", which was pretty intimidating. And as we all know, Bob's a detailed guy. And he has an office in his basement where he did all his finances and his taxes, and he basically took care of the household things. And one day, Bob invited me to his basement office. And that was pretty cool, because at that point, I felt like I was part of the family. I was in at that point. And he was a great father-in-law, but he was also a great role model, and he just took me under his wing and helped me in a lot of ways.
So my name is Carly Potok. I am one of Bob's granddaughters. We call him Papa, or the Captain, affectionately. And I think what I've really realized and been reflecting on over the last couple of days is Papa was just such a big deal, and he's the man. And I think I certainly didn't realize that till I got older, maybe in the last 10 years or so. We had heard that he was a pilot and then he flew in World War II, but I think I just couldn't put it into context until I started getting older and realizing how wonderful he was. And I remember I would bring books to show him, and I would bring books of planes from World War II. And my mind was blown, because we would just sit there and we would look through the pages. This was like a 200-page book of every aircraft that was in World War II. And he could tell you every single one, the engine in it, whether it was a good plane or not. And it was burned in his brain. It was just these incredible memories, which I love, because I love that when Papa would talk about flying, he was so proud. And I also remember in the last couple of days, I was Googling him, and I Googled Captain Robert Feiten, and I found this video that was of somebody interviewing him for a veterans project, and it was from 10 years ago or so, and he was talking about his time flying planes. And I love it because I actually just haven't seen his body language like that in a long time, where he was just really sitting up so straight and his chest was puffed out, and he was so proud to be telling these stories.
State your name, branch of service, and squadron.
Robert Feiten, Captain, United States Navy, retired. The squadron was VPB, Victor Prep B, bombing 131.
So those are good memories of Papa.
I'm Mallory. I'm Bob's granddaughter. So I'm the daughter of Melanie, who is his 5th child, but first daughter. And I just always remember he had this amazing garden that he just loved and tended to. And he grew cucumbers, and he always had pumpkins for us at Halloween. But I think kind of his prized possession was he had this big row of sugar snap peas. And so I was probably 5 or 6 the first time I got to go out there. And so I just ran up and started picking them off the vines. And I remember him kind of scolding me and saying, that is not the right way to do that. Because I was taking the vines off of the little fence they were growing on. And he showed me how to pick sugar snap peas with 2 hands. And you hold the vine with one and you hold the pea with the other, and then you use your thumbnail to kind of break it off of the stem. And then we'd pick a bunch of those and take them into Nana, and she'd put them in a salad for us.
I had the privilege of taking care of him for almost 3 years. And the great thing about that was I got a chance to remember what a great dry sense of humor Dad had. And he had Alzheimer's, so some of the answers to things were a little different than you would expect under normal circumstances. I'll give you an example. Dad loved to have his kids come by. It was his favorite thing to have the grandkids or his children come by. The problem is with Alzheimer's, they could have come by 10 minutes ago and he totally forgot. And he would always say, Louie, when are the children coming by? When are your brothers or sisters coming by? And I couldn't really tell him, hey, Dad, they were here 10 minutes ago, but you forgot. That was embarrassing. So I said, well, Dad, my brothers and sisters, your grandchildren, love you so much, but sometimes it's hard for them to get here because they work and they have families, but they get here whenever they can, Dad. They really love you. And he said, oh, okay. And I said, Dad, you're forgetting something. I live with you 5 days a week. You get to see me every day. And he looked at me and said, oh boy, the booby prize.
I'm Janine Schiavone. I'm married to Bob's eldest, Louis, so I'm his granddaughter. The little one, the only one in the family who's little. Mostly I want to share with you my reflections of the time that he spent with us when he lived in our home and Lou and I took care of him. What impressed me every day was that Bob talked about his parents with great affection. Now I know that in those days life was hard. His father, Louis Otto, was a hard-working man. I'm sure there was a lot of discipline around the household. However, every time he spoke of them, it was always with such endearment and respect. So fast forward to my husband getting him out every day. That was one of the goals, is to get him out and walking around. And he would take him on almost a daily run to Costco. You know how big Costco is. And on one occasion, I was with them. And I couldn't help but notice that Lou got his dad out of the car and getting going, walking into the store. And Lou had gotten to where he would lay out his clothes for him in the morning and help him to get dressed. And more, he started selecting clothes that were like the ones he was wearing. And there they were, khaki zippered pants, flannel shirt, and this red velour vest. And I looked at them and I said, father and son, just like Bob and his parents. You could just feel the tenderness between them. And I think that is a legacy that he has left my husband.
I'm Mary Jean. I am Bob's niece. I am Tootie, his sister's oldest daughter. And I'm Chris. I'm the youngest daughter. And we are here in place of our mother. She will be 92 this month and was unable to travel. So we are here in place of her. And one of my fondest memories of Uncle Bob was I had the privilege of traveling with Uncle Bob, Uncle Phil, and myself. Who was fourth one? Uncle Rich. No, not Uncle Rich. Anyway, to Ireland. And we spent 16 days in Ireland. Mom was the fourth one. Anyway, my best memory of Uncle Bob and my mother was the roads are really narrow in Ireland and the bushes are right there, and we would come along rows of berry bushes, and Uncle Phil would have to drive slow enough that they could reach out and grab those berries and eat our way down the road. It was just a delight. I learned so much about Uncle Bob and Uncle Phil and my mom. It was just a precious, precious trip. I didn't really get to see Uncle Bob that much because I'm the youngest one and we had kind of all moved around by then. But when Bob's mom, Hazel, our grandmother, passed away, I rode down from Minneapolis area with my mother, so I didn't have a car in Winona. And Uncle Bob offered to take me home, which was 3 hours, back up to Minneapolis because he wanted to see our house we had just built. We had just bought a house that was built in the 1900s. And I took him into the home and gave him a tour, and we were up in the nursery, and he was just so pleased with this house because the windows went from floor to ceiling, and he did not have to bend over to look out the window. And he thought it was fantastic.
The one word that comes to mind when I think of him is helper. Regardless of whether he was helping out by driving us to school, helping us install an attic fan or a basketball hoop, or a playground or whatever else, he was always willing to help us out. So he drove us to school, to and from school for years. One time we went out, we were driving around and he said, you know what, I'm in the mood for donuts. And I was like, awesome. So we pull up to a Safeway, he goes inside, I wait in the car, he comes back out with 2 donuts and he ate both of them. So yeah, but it was all right. It was that's what he was in the mood for, and I was willing to drive along. He's somebody who really put a tremendous amount of passion into every single thing that he did, whether that was flying airplanes or hanging out with family. He was really very focused and put a lot of attention forth towards whatever it was that he was doing. And so I think we're all going to miss him quite a bit. So yeah, it's an honor to be a part of his life.
There are lots of things that I remember about Papa that I love, but one of the things that I cherish the most is that when my youngest brothers Ben and Gabe were born, Papa drove Johnny and me to school every single day for probably, 6 or 7 years. And that was just really special, treasured time that, I just feel like I value so much now. And even then, I thought it was so cool. Nobody else had their grandpa taking them to school or picking them up. And the fact that he was a pilot and he would talk to us about interesting things, I just felt like a princess when he drove us to school. One of the things that I've always appreciated about Papa is how jovial he was. And that's something that I think I'm always going to remember about him. His wit and his sense of humor were something that couldn't be matched. It always cheered me up to see him. He just always made you feel like he was happy to see you and wanted to make your time valuable by making you smile. And that's something that I think is a really unique quality and one of the things that I'm going to miss most about him, but will try to live on in my own day-to-day life.
I'm Janine, and this is Louie.
And we're married.
And we're going to sing a song for you, and this song has history. Bob sang this song while he was at our house many times. And Louie actually picked it up from his father and sang it to me when we were first dating. So we want to share it with you. This is part of his legacy to us. I love you.
A bushel and a peck, a bushel and a peck, and a hug around the neck, a hug around the neck, and a barrel and a heap, a barrel and a heap, and I'm talking in my sleep about you, 'cause I love you, a bushel and a peck, you bet your birdie's neck I do,
a doodle
doodle doo doo,
'cause I love you,
a bushel and a peck,
a bushel and a peck, though you make my heart a wreck. You make my heart a wreck, and you make my life a mess. You make my life a mess, yes, a mess of happiness about you, 'cause I
love you, a bushel and a peck,
you
bet your birdie's neck I do, doodle doo doo doo.